Welcome everyone. Today we're going to be taking a look at the investment strategy, and this is used for in melee versus range matchups in the mid lane. And if you're a melee champion player, this is amazing to watch because I'm going to be explaining the strategy and how it works. But if you're a range champion player, I'm also going to be showing you how to counter this at the end of this video. So the investment strategy, what does it mean? Well, let's just play this particular example out first, and I'm going to be talking up straight over it. What we're going to be seeing, right, is that whenever you're playing a range versus melee champion in mid lane, is that the range champion is looking to bully out the melee champion with their range advantage and stack a big wave and then eventually harass them when they need to last it and get a lot of damage off onto them. That's what the range champion is trying to do because they can utilize their range advantage and get a lead in the lane. What the melee champion wants to do, right, is he actually wants to be able to farm up and stay safe, stay high HP without losing all that much HP. The only problem is, right, is that a lot of people don't understand how they do that because a lot of people are not able to invest in the future and are only able to really see short term. So what does this strategy really mean? Well, we're playing a champion most of the time when we're playing a melee champion is when we take second wind D-shield. This strategy is only able to be used with second wind D-shield. If you're playing Kiana with longsword, do not use this strategy. Second wind D-shield, right? Second wind D-shield is a very interesting combination of runes and items because it allows you to regenerate a lot of health whenever you've taken damage in a very short term. What it does do is that it has a specific length of how long it lasts whenever you take damage. So if you look at your second wind D-shield, it has like an effect time of about 8 to 10 seconds, depending on which one you have. So in an ideal world, what happens with these runes and items is that you get hit once, then you don't get hit and you allow yourself to regenerate. So this is the regeneration. You get hit once again, then you like to get regenerated again. And then you get hit once again, and you like to regenerate. This is how it works. You're constantly able to stay full health if that happens. The problem is that most of mid laners, right, especially like these mages, they will actually prevent this particular healing pattern from working by stacking a big wave and then harassing you under tower whenever you need to last it. So what's going to happen is that whenever you need to last it under tower is then you need to walk up, hit all of these minions at the same time, and you're going to be dropping incredibly low health because what's going to happen is you're going to get hit, and it only gives very short windows for these runes and items to regenerate you. So how does the investment strategy come into play? You saw it in a perfect example right here. This was Certus in EOS Challenger showing you how it's done. The investment strategy is a strategy in which that we use to actually invest a little bit of our HP in the sense that we are happy with Orianna actually trading upon us at the beginning of the lane. So we are going to drop a little bit lower. But what we're going to gain for that, because we invest HP, but what we're going to gain for that is we're going to actually gain a better wave state. And with a better wave state, what's going to happen is that we're not going to get crashed upon. This big wave is not going to crash onto your turret, which means that you're actually going to be able to survive the lane state a lot better because you're going to get more value out of your second wind and D-shield because you invest your HP a little bit earlier, and therefore you increase the time in which that these items and runes actually allow to heal you. So to recap what happens here with Certus' game, right, is he's just actively hitting the wave, he's thinning out the wave, and he's okay with taking a little bit of damage because he knows that taking a little bit of damage in these particular lanes is inevitable. You're fine taking a bit of damage. It's completely okay. And he knows that. So what he does is he actually actively thins out the wave, and therefore he prevents Orianna from stacking a big 2-wave crash, a big 3-wave crash, and really getting that big chunk value under the tower. Because that is really where the Oriannas will therefore win the lane. And you're actually forced to give a lot of creeps in that specific case. Usually if you get stacked upon, you're going to be losing about 10 to 15 creeps under the tower because of how much damage that you're actually going to be taking. Because Orianna has short cooldowns. and quite a bit of damage, especially with Ari. So in this case, Certus does a fantastic job keeping the wave neutral right here and putting himself in a position where he can get access to all of these creeps. Because he's putting more pressure on the wave, he also forces Orianna to like make the decision between hitting him and hitting the minions herself. And what you'll see a lot is that the enemy mages will actually drop a lot of CS if they do this, because they have to split their attention. And now suddenly you're going to be in a position where you're going to actually be in CS leads while also getting HP leads, because if they hit you, minions will start hitting them as well. And that puts you in a much better position than if you would get massively stacked upon. But you have to understand that you need to take damage to do this, because you cannot like walk up to the wave and just freely thin it out most of the times. A lot of people will start hitting you, but you're okay with that. That's completely fine, as long as you keep the wave set a little bit neutral. What you can also do is you can also play for the push whenever you're a champion with a lot of wave clear. So for example, Yone can do that, Yasuo can do that, but not really a champion like, I mean, Akali can theoretically do it, but you got to be very nuanced with your wave management. Whenever you do this, right, your goal is to make sure that your wave never gets stuck onto the enemy side. Make sure that it doesn't freeze just barely outside of that tower. What do I mean with a very specific moment where it can potentially freeze? Is if the wave freezes right here, you're in a lot of trouble, because that's not going to be possible for you to unfreeze it anymore. That's where it's too deep and you cannot reach the casters, which are being melee. So what you have to understand is that if you decide to use this strategy, make sure that you are very actively looking at how the wave states are located and how big the wave states are, because you do not want your wave to get frozen onto the enemy side. And that means that if you're looking to like even push into the enemies, that's fine. You can do that sometimes. But make sure that you push in such a way that it never gets frozen on the enemy side. So make sure that you actively crash the waves and know when to crash which wave. Let's take a look at an example of which Chovy actually shows why the investment strategy is so important to utilize. So this was a video that I actually made on Chovy on his world performance versus quad. And what he does right here is he really shows us what happens when you run D-Shield second wind, but you let yourself get stacked upon. In this case, Quad tries to like thin out the wave, but Chovy actually does a really good job with his out attacks, and he's eventually able to still get the nice little stack. You also know that it's a little bit easier on a champion like Smolder compared to a champion like Orianna or Syndra, because Smolder just has out attack resets, he's got more base damage, so his out attacks and his punishing onto Yone is more problematic. But this is what's going to happen when you're in the tower in this particular situation. You can see that Yone is forced to give a lot of creeps, otherwise he's just taking a lot of damage from Smolder right here. And that puts Chovy in this advantage where he's going to get this CS lead because of this wave management. What's going to happen is then he's going to stack another big wave onto Yone, and what he will do with this particular wave, he's also just going to be harassing Yone onto every single minion. And you see that Yone just has a really tough time accessing these minions. He's dropping a lot of farm, and he's really struggling holding by into this lane. If you also look at the replay of this vault, what you'll see is that Chovy rocks up like 25 CS lead in this particular game. Mainly because of this, because he was allowing himself to get these nice little wave crashes here under the tower and put a lot of pressure onto the Yone. As you can see, this is a massive difference to what we saw in the Orianna vault. And was this a situation where Yone could have done this particular strategy? Well, not really. Well, potentially. It really depends on how good that the opposite laner is, how much threat that you're under, how much threat that you have. Maybe if he has a very high ganking threat jungle, maybe he actually has a little bit more room to do that. But in this case, Chovy actually outplayed him. He got himself a beautiful crush, and he started completely nuking the Yone in the turret. So this was a perfect example of what happens if you're not able to do this at the highest level. This also has merit, of course, on other champions, and Zeka is a master on showing this on Akali. In this case, you see that there's a little bit of early fighting. This is good for Zeka because, once again, he's investing HP. He's going to regenerate it. Lissandra is not going to regenerate because she does not have second with D-Shield. And what Zeka is going to do is Zeka is going to nicely keep the wave in a neutral position right here. So this Lissandra cannot stack a big wave onto him. The way he does that is does it by aggressive positioning, stepping up far, and thinning out the wave with his Qs. And in this case, he doesn't run fleet, he just runs second wind D-shield. But he does do a very nice job just standing aggressively and keeping the wave state into this nice little pocket so it doesn't eventually force him to crash. Most important thing is, like, of course, you're going to be able to survive a crash, but you're going to be dropping a lot of minions, and that's not something that especially the pros want, of course. So this is a perfect example of what he's doing right here. Is he's taking trades and thinning out the wave at the same time. This is beautiful because this puts him now in a position where he will not get crashed upon, and he's using his abilities actively in such a way that he is actually allowed to keep the wave right here. The only thing in this particular example is that we see is that this wave is now going to actually be slow pushing into Lissandra. That's not necessarily a problem, right? As long as we just make sure that the wave eventually crashes. In this case, he does become a little bit more vulnerable to ganks. And we bait out Lee Sin's time. Absolutely fantastic. That's a small win in our in the book. And with this particular wave state, we want to make sure that it crashes. Like, we do not want this wave state to get stuck here in this particular position. So what do? Is we put a lot of emphasis and a lot of our energy towards actually crashing this wave. You can see it right here. We're trying to crash this wave. We get ganked again, this time by the top laner. So you see that it can sometimes get a little bit dicey with this particular situation. But we do eventually manage to find the crash. We get ourselves a dive. Beautiful stuff. And now we're just going to be rinse and repeating this. We're going to keep the wave set a little bit more neutral. Manage to not get massively stacked upon. And right here, like, he's going to take a reset real soon. So he's fine just letting Lissandra push. Lissandra also has a little bit more items. And once again, it puts him in his position where he doesn't lose that many minions. He doesn't lose that much HP. But the main trick is that he invests his HP to get that type of wave state. And that allows him to actually access the lane a little bit better. So in this example, we're going to be taking a look at how Chovy counters this particular strategy from the enemy Akali. The smaller versus Yone example was also a little bit of an example, but that one was a little bit more skewed because he's playing an AD carry mid, so it's a little bit easier to do that. But in this case, he's playing Orianna versus Akali, and this is a very high elo game, as you can see. So both players are competent and know what they're doing. So in this case, right, Chovy's trying to build a crash, and Orianna is actively, right, trying to deny this by looking for trades and looking for Qs onto Chovy plus the wave. Because once again, Akali has second wind D-shield. Every trade that's being taken right here is mainly favored for Akali because of the fact that she's going to be regenerating it, and a champion like Orianna has no inbuilt regeneration in her kit. And we see that Chovy does a really good job at denying Akali like the hard push by positioning himself in such a way that he stands outside of the minions, in which that Akali never gets the opportunity to hit both Chovy and the entire wave. She hits a bit of the wave, but not the entire wave. And then he also makes sure that whenever Akali's ability is down, he walks up in the lane, takes space, and therefore denies access from Akali hitting the wave. Look what happened. Akali just used his cooldown. Chovy just went up. If Akali gives him the range, he's going to hit the Akali and he's going to walk backwards because he's going to then draw minion aggro, and he's going to be in a position where the minions will eventually push in such a way slower into him, a little bit faster into the Akali. And you can see that the Akali tries to really invest her cooldowns and invest her health to get a favorable wave state and also reach level 2 first. So what Chovy does, right, is Chovy is fine with this. Because what his goal is, as Chovy, is he wants to prevent the crash. If he can prevent this crash, he is in a really good spot. Because of the fact that if the wave then gets stuck on his side, he can build the biggest wave ever and eventually still get massive value from this big wave step. So he is actively trading here with the Orianna, with this wave state, standing outside of the minions, right, to make sure that this Akali does not get high value abilities. And what you eventually see is because he's out attacking this Orianna, this Akali so often, what's going to happen is that he puts himself in a position where Akali cannot crash this wave because she just invested all the cooldowns onto the Orianna, which is normally the good thing to do. And now we get into this position right here where Chovy is going to reach level 3 first. Akali invested all of this HP and got constantly hit by Chovy for a better wave state, but the wave state didn't eventually get in this position where it was favorable for her. So by good positioning, by taking up space in the lane, by actively auto-attacking the Orianna, Akali and walking back and therefore dragging minions, what he actually managed to do, he managed to put himself in a position where he's countering this strategy, and now this Akali is struggling. This Akali is going to massively struggle. So that's exactly what we're going to be seeing. We're going to now see this massive slow build coming out from Orianna, which is, of course, in an ideal way what these champions want to be doing. And then we're going to be berating this Akali under the turret. Akali, as you can see, still has her potion left. So we can, she can survive. But we're going to just make her sweat for every single minion. And it's exactly what Chovy does. What happens in this situation is that Akali is going to be forced to drop a lot of minions. Look at how many minions she's forced to drop. This is amazing. Beautiful QW. And eventually we get ourselves a nice little ward. Unfortunately, we get ganked by DK Lucid. But we got some backup from our team. But this is like what happens if you counter the strategy, right? You see that Chovy does a fantastic job with the wave management, with the juggling of minion aggro, with his positioning and movement in the lane. This is very, very high level gameplay. It's very, very high level. This is impressive stuff. But you see that there's a counter to this particular strategy as well. And you have to understand that it's eventually just a skill check. The better player will be able to get out ahead. If the enemy Akali is not that good and not that good at utilizing that strategy, what's going to happen is that it's easier to counter. But if the player is really good that counters it, and even the player is good to that does the strategy in itself, you also see that there's just a little bit of a skill check, and both sides can win on this equation. The goal for the range champion in this case is to build this big stack wave and eventually harass the enemy under the tower and make them sweat for CS. That's really where they're going to be bleeding the most amount of CS. So, very unique part of the lane. Very unique video. If you guys enjoyed, let me know in the comments. If you guys want coaching, there's going to be a link in this description. And I'll see you guys real soon with another video.